But anyway, I want you to welcome Professor Robert Blain.
Vice Speaker. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. 4 weeks ago, on August 30th, my son Brian was killed in an automobile accident. Monday, the 24th, would have been his 20th birthday. He considered himself a world citizen, and he was looking forward to being a monetary reformer. I never considered not coming to this meeting as a result of Brian's death. His death reminded me that life and death are very closely related. To be alive is like having the lights on, and we take it for granted every day. We get upset about all sorts of things that are really small stuff. You know, don't sweat the small stuff. And then death comes, and we are reminded that our power exists while we are alive. As Thomas Jefferson said, the earth belongs to the living. It is important for us to take action while we live, because we don't know when will be our last day. And I'm going to present material here as if this were my last day, because there's no way of knowing one way or another. My topic is democratic money. And I had a very long presentation, but I've reduced it to 16 slides to provide, hopefully, discussion time. And I've ended up with economic justice as the lead for what I'm going to talk about. And I think I'm going to provide a piece of the puzzle that relates to the questions that were asked and the presentations that were asked yesterday. I jotted down a few things. Stephen said we need to put time on the side of justice, and that fits. I noticed the cover of his book has time on it, The Science of Money, and then the graphic is a clock. He noted that economists have removed morality from the conversation, and justice is a matter of morality. And there are other issues which perhaps they will come up as the discussion proceeds. What do I mean by injustice? Injustice is some people receive too much, while others receive too little. And we've all heard, no justice, no peace. Economic justice worldwide is based on the principle, share the work, share the wealth. What that means is an hour of product for an hour of work mediated by time money. I want to present, this is really the summary of it, the essence of it. The theory, the essentials of it are also printed on the back of the money that is at your various locations. And there's an article, a text written up that you're welcome to, as well as a hard copy of this presentation that I'm making. When we receive money for the work that we do, we are not paid. We have simply received a receipt, a certificate of what we are owed. It is then when we present the money to someone else that we are communicating to them the right that we have for a product. The problem is that we're talking about three people, A, B, and C. A is the employer, B is the employee, and C is the one we purchase from. A gives B a note, which is money. The purpose of that note is to enable B to go to C and get paid. Our problem today is that we have no unit for money. When we say $1, what's a dollar? Other than a piece of paper. We need a unit to define money that is appropriate. Now, I'm not going to gold, I'm not going to commodities. The only good thing about gold was that it actually was something, but it was the wrong something. So with that in mind, I'm going to quickly go over the benefits of the point that the AMI is committed to, which is government creation of money. But I really want to focus on why it is important to get time on money. And with time on money, there are always exceptions that can be negotiated by the parties involved. In fact, it is impossible to prevent negotiation with money. The beauty of money is it decentralizes decisions. It allows people to make decisions on the basis of their own judgments locally. But we need a unit so that it can be accurate. Democratic money. Democratic money is paid into circulation by a democratic government, debt-free and interest-free. We're all on that page. Denominated in work time. That's the piece that I'm offering to you today. Why work time? There are several reasons. First, because economies are organized on time. Everything about an economy is organized on time, so there must be something about time that's terribly important. Everyone understands it. There's another reason for it. And third, work time is the center of gravity of currency exchange rates, and it has been ever since currency exchange rates have been published by the International Monetary Fund. Work time is the de facto world monetary unit. We find that work time is like gravity. It wasn't recognized even though it existed long before people recognized it. The same is true of work time. We find that out by taking gross domestic product as representing not the value of what is produced in a society, but the total money price of everything that is produced in a society. And that's how it's calculated. We add up the prices of everything produced. So take it as the money price. Then the real price is the hours of work that are necessary to produce those goods and services. If we divide the GDP by the number of hours of work that produced it, we get GDP per hour, which gives us a definition of the value of the money. And here is a graph for the latest year of data available around 2004 using International Monetary Fund exchange rates and GDP per hour for 93 countries. Each of those squares represents a country. And the center line represents equal work time. That is operating like a center of gravity with all the countries hovering around that line. That's the line of best fit. The correlation is 0.86. It can only go to 1. So this is a very strong correlation. And I have graphs for 1950, 1960, 1970, 1980, 1990, and 2000, and the correlations are all of that same order. Now, when you look at the particular countries that are above the line, those are the poor countries of the world. Their exchange rates are too high. If you look at the countries that are under the line, those are the rich countries. Their exchange rates are too low. And this is why, through the medium of exchange rates, the first world is exploiting the third world, sucking their resources to ourselves, subsidizing our way of life, ruining our own industrial base, polluting the environment, transporting goods all over the world that are unnecessary to transport these distances. People in China need shoes, manufacture them there, wear them there. People here need shoes, manufacture them here, and wear them here. But the exchange rates are subverting this, and we are impoverishing the third world while we are destroying our own capacity to support ourselves. This is evidence for the operation of work time. Now, the advantages of democratic time money paid into circulation. First is seigniorage, which is the difference between the cost of printing and the face value of the money. It only takes a few pennies to print money, but it's put into circulation at its face value. This would benefit taxpayers. Paid people produce goods and services. So it's not a matter of just giving money to people, but actually having them produce the goods that we need. The third is that elected officials decide which goods and services, so we as citizens have some input as to how our communities develop, and there's no debt and no interest. And the fifth reason is that time brings reasonable justice to prices. To bring reason to money prices by converting all income to hours. This can be done immediately. And the example I'm giving is $50 per hour. For 40 hours a week for 50 weeks of work, that comes to 2,000 hours. At $50 an hour, that's $100,000. I take $50 an hour because the GDP of the United States now, divided by the number of hours to produce it, comes to about $50 an hour. Consider that $100,000, 1 year of income, and I think it's income greater than most people receive. On that basis, $1 million is 10 years of income at $50 an hour. $10 million is 100 years. $100 million is 1,000 years. So we are seeing multimillionaires and billionaires receiving tens of thousands of years of income at $50 an hour. Under the current system, it is very difficult for anyone to challenge those kind of numbers because you have no real basis. You can say, well, gee, I wish I won the lottery at $100 million. Boy, would I have a great life. However, what we see here is we can say $100 million, that's 1,000 years of income. By doing that, we bring reason into money prices. Henry Kissinger was quoted as saying, whoever controls the money system controls the world. I believe that if we define money in terms of work time, we will liberate the world, very much like the metric system has done for us, which I'll speak about again. When you convert the minimum wage of $6 an hour at the rate of $50 an hour, that's 12 cents an hour. By converting all our prices, that would then set off conversations and negotiations among all of us with everyone. I was just talking to people striking against the Congress Hotel across the street, and it's about wages, it's about health benefits and all that sort of thing. All these things are really gone out of control, and we don't know what to do about it. We need to do what the metric system did, which is give ourselves a unit so we can talk reason about prices. We would also expose excessive incomes and profits and end war by ending economic injustice. We now have plutocratic money. The choice is not between socialism and capitalism. The choice is between plutocratic money and democratic money. Plutocratic money it always flows back to creditors. Whether it's a factory borrowing money, the money has to go back. As you heard Brian Leslie say, and as many of you already know, we borrow the money and then we have to pay back more than we borrowed, and that brings about infinite increase in debt. The government borrows, home mortgages borrow, students borrow for school. The whole world is on this debt system. And the money supply is always owed, never owned. Interest payable only from principal, therefore debt grows at compound interest. And creditors are unelected, therefore they are unaccountable. James Jackson, Georgia's first congressman, February 9th, 1790. This country deserves a holiday in honor of James Jackson for what he had to say on that day on February 9th. After reviewing what had happened, and you saw it with Brian Leslie again with the debt of England, but you can see it in many other countries. In 1790, he talked about Venice, Genoa, France, Spain, and England, all of which had adopted a debt money system. And here's what he said about it for the United States when Alexander Hamilton was proposing the same thing. Let us take warning by the errors of Europe and guard against the introduction of a system followed by calamities so universal. Though our present debt may be but a few millions, in the course of a single century, it may be multiplied to an extent we dare not think of. A farmer's letter to the editor. Such injustice and oppression may be colored over with fine words, but there is a time coming when the pen of history will detect and expose the folly of the arguments in favor of the proposed system, as well as the iniquity, not inequity, iniquity, not unfairness, but evil. And here is the pen of history. This is a graph showing federal debt in 1790 increased just a bit under 6% per year. It's on logarithm paper, so we get a straight line with a constant rate of increase. The blue line represents actual total public and private debt in the United States. The correspondence between the two is a correlation of about 0.99. This is exactly what James Jackson feared. We do not have the data for the 19th century because there was no agency collecting the necessary information. It was only with the establishment of the Federal Reserve System that we were able to get that information. This is what James Jackson predicted. Now, when you show it on a normal graph, the huge increases are all very, very recent. So we tend to blame the current administration or current policies for the growth. But it is a process of exponential growth, like a snowball rolling downhill. When you get to the bottom, you got a huge snowball, and one more turn draws a huge amount. The disadvantages of plutocratic money, which we have now: no unit to define its value. This is Australian money with American money. It allows astronomical differences in wages and income. The differences that we're seeing today occurred gradually over time, percent by percent, year after year, like that snowball rolling downhill. It's just that now the snowball is so large that there is this massive transfer of wealth and control of money, much bigger than ever before. It's like if the number of fish in a lake were to double every year, the year before it was full, it would only be half full. And then 1 year it would fill up. So we have that kind of an exponential process. And everyone always wants more. Everyone always wants more. Whether it's minimum wage, whether it's $10 an hour, whether it's $20 an hour, whether it's $5,000 an hour, whether it's $50 million a year, everybody wants more because there's no sense of enough. There's no sense of limit. So in a way, I don't fault people who want more. What I say is they don't know what else to do. Even the very rich are insecure in this present system. You could lose it all in a heartbeat. You never know how much is enough. And war makes the most money. Why war? War is profitable. This is a Tomahawk cruise missile. It costs $600,000. It carries 1,000 pounds of any kind of diabolical incendiary devices that the human mind can conceive, and it can target it from 100 miles away. And $600,000 a shot. In the invasion of Iraq, 750 Tomahawk cruise missiles were targeted on that country. And 15,000 other bombs were dropped on Iraq during the invasion, many before and many since. This was supposed to be a response to 4 commercial airliners striking the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and we have had just an orgy of destruction. And it is no wonder that that poor country lays in ruin, with people generating their electricity with generators without adequate water. We have done a terrible disservice and injustice on the world with that invasion. Why did we do it? Because we followed the law of the instrument. The law of the instrument is, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When we reached into our toolbox as a country, what did we find? Weapons. And so when we had a problem, that's what we used. Profits, profits, profits. Hundreds of billions. President Dwight David Eisenhower, April 18th, 1953. General Dwight David Eisenhower. A lot of my students don't know that. He was a general of the Allied forces in World War II. He said in 53, every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. Now, we have achieved global harmony in certain ways. One model is political democracy, the principle one person, one vote. This was hard won, and even today there are people who don't accept it. However, I think the general public, certainly in the United States, believes that this is a fair way to run a political system. And your own talk about getting the plutocratic money out of the system, I think, implies support for the principle one person, one vote. However, that principle has been subverted by the unlimited accumulation of money so that we now have political plutocracy, the best government money can buy. The second model is the metric system, which has clear and stable units of measure. I keep coming back to the metric system. Think about it as much as you can. That's the model we need for our money, the metric system. In that system, measures of weight and length govern relations wisely. That is, when you apply a meter to measuring length, you pretty much get a unit, a measure that other people understand, and that tends to be very accurate. Accurate, that is to say, wise, correct. It is also efficient. There is no need for long-term disputes about the accuracy of the measure. You just look at the result, and other people can look at the same thing. And it is amicable, just like AMI. Amicable, friendly, done in a spirit of cooperation. And that happens worldwide. That's what we need to have happen with money. Now, this is a fragment of the general theory from which I came to the conclusion that I'm sharing with you today. It is based on what I call the information chain paradigm. That paradigm basically says that cooperation is the foundation for the production of wealth. It's people working together. In order to increase the wealth that we produce, we have to enlarge the scale of cooperation. If there were only 10 people cooperating, there's a very severe limit to what can be produced. We need 100, we need 1,000. Today we need tens of thousands of people cooperating in order to produce the wealth that we use and take for granted. The general problem with that is that we must communicate indirectly through chains of communication, person to person to person. And as the scale of cooperation enlarges, the length or the distance of that communication increases. The fundamental character of that communication is that we lose information as people repeat messages from one person to another person. It's subjected to entropy, the decay of the message. The evolution of the scale of cooperation by human beings has been achieved by inventing ways to reduce the rate of information loss. Okay. A small scale of cooperation is supported by speech. That's what I'm using here. Speech is a very rich medium of communication. It conveys a lot of information because you not only have the words and the grammar, but you also have the manner in which it's delivered, you have the body gestures, and all that sort of thing. However, when it is repeated from person to person to person, the message deteriorates very rapidly. So it can only sustain a small scale of cooperation. What we did then was invent writing. Writing allowed us to encode information in a durable form. It reduced the amount of information that we could put in our messages, but it made it possible to communicate that information a longer distance without losing it all before we got to the last person. The third invention was numbers. Numbers are a subset of writing, and they are operated by a simpler logic than ordinary English grammar. So we use numbers to communicate all sorts of things. Today you're here because of the date, you're here because of the time, you found your way here through flight numbers, through route signs, and streets and floors. Numbers allow us to cooperate on a very large scale, but they involve a small amount of information that people can understand a long distance from the originator of the message. Well, when you look at these three things, and this is how I got to money, and you look at money, what is money? It's words and numbers. We've been focusing here on the source of the money. Should it be the private bank? Should it be the government? The question I'm raising here is, what's the message? What's the meaning of the money? When you ask that question and you turn to economists, they don't even ask the question, because they are prisoners of their supply and demand paradigm. However, having come to money through this process of speech, writing, numbers, I ask the question, what is the purpose of money? And the purpose of money is to communicate reciprocity. Cooperation depends on three principles: communication, specialization, and reciprocity. We continue to cooperate with one another to the degree that we believe we are being treated fairly, reciprocally. That is, I made a contribution, I have a right to draw from the stock of goods and services that other people have produced equivalent to my contribution. That is the basic morality of economics. And it's probably the stuff you learned as a child on your mother's lap, among your siblings, with your neighbors. Fairness and justice. The word justice has roots similar to give to things according to their nature, according to what their qualities are and what they deserve. The 10th Provisional World Parliament met in Kara, Togo, Africa. And this was just this past summer in June. Glenn Martin and I were both there. And at that session, the 10th Provisional Parliament adopted the term Earth Hours to refer to world currency, and it adopted the circle with the cross in it to signify the symbol for that money. And that symbol represents the unity of human beings from north to south, from east to west, and all together. 2 years prior to that, the Provisional World Parliament had adopted the hour as the world currency unit. That's why I got involved with it. I thought they are supporting using time, money. And I would like to see the American Monetary Institute back this same principle, as the Provisional World Government has already done. We are talking and thinking about the United States. But remember, Brian was a world citizen, as we are. And as Glenn Martin made so clear, in Libya, at the 9th Provisional World Parliament, we are all human beings. We are brought up in different cultures. We believe in different religions or no religions. But take our clothes off and we're all the same. We need to think of this planet Earth as Buckminster Fuller did, and as Brian's middle name represents. Brian's middle name was Buckminster in honor of Bucky Fuller. He said, this is a spaceship. Our responsibility is take care of the crew and the passengers. After all, it's the best place we know of as far as we know. Thank you.